Hello. So, for those that don't know, which I assume is most of you, my name's Neil. I run a photography studio called Made Photography in Somerset in the UK, and I do family portraiture, but I also do product photography. And today I'm going to be talking to you about this image. Um, I recently submitted a fellowship panel of sunglasses. Pretty much all of them were sort of in camera, apart from a few little bits of retouching. So I thought I would sort of take you through how something like this is created without having to do layers. This image itself that you see was probably the image within the panel that required the most amount of work because I had to get rid of a earbud stick and blue tack. But all the images from the panel were all a single shot. They weren't kind of layer masking in different sort of elements and things like that. Um, so it kind of seemed like the right image to choose for doing this. So the first thing that I did was I got a bit of card and a sheet of glass. The card I put a curve in because I didn't want it sitting up against the glass. And then the sheet of glass is put at an angle because I want the water to run down. The arms of the glasses, I've basically cut a thin piece of tape and got it around the arms of the glasses to bring them in nice and tight together. And then the next thing is to kind of stick the glasses down onto the glass. So what I actually use is double-sided tape. It's actually sort of tape that I use for mounting prints and things. But yeah, so it's just kind of putting a nice long bit of double-sided tape on the back of the arm so that it's not going to show up anywhere in the picture. And then generally what I try and do is get it about halfway down the sheet of glass. Mainly because of the fact that I want to make sure that I can see the water coming in from the top and going out the bottom. Now the only thing is, although the glasses are sitting quite securely here, they will start to dip. And because I'm going to have a diffuser over the top of it, I don't want to see the edge of the diffuser creeping in. Because the glasses have moved slightly, so I use an earbud stick with a couple of bits of blue tack, and I just bring that underneath to kind of rest the arm on. So obviously I am going to have to retouch that earbud stick out in post-production, but that and getting rid of a few bits of dust will hopefully be kind of all that I have to do when I'm actually retouching the picture. Because the main thing that I want to make sure is that the reflection in the lenses is clean. So over the top of the glasses, I've got a trifecta stand sort of set up, and then behind that, I am kind of coming in from above. I've got the light. I use a power cable that comes in from sort of slightly above the lighting. And the main reason I use the kind of higher power cable is because of the fact that I don't want any power cables on the ground because I'm playing with water. I then put the diffuser over the top of the glasses, and then when I'm kind of going to be looking through the camera, it's making sure that I can only see the diffuser and I can't see the ceiling of the studio or the edge of the diffusers or anything like that. The actual diffuser itself, I literally have a big long roll of tracing paper, and I tape it to a frame. And the reason that I do it with tracing paper is that if it gets marked, if it gets damaged, I can just replace it. So I literally just rip all the tape off, take the tracing paper off, and then tape on a new bit. And then above, the light that I'm using, and it's just a single light source, is the Octa with the grid on there. So the first thing that I do is once I've got it kind of all set up how I think I want it, I just double check that I don't have any reflection. But here, although I don't have the edge of the reflector coming in, you can see that I can see the edge of the shadow of the glasses. So I'm going to move the camera over a bit, and then I'm just going to double check that I can sort of see. I can't see the edge of the reflection of the diffuser, sorry, and it's all sort of nice and clean in the lenses and stuff like that. As it turns out, and I discover when I get into post-production, I can see the on the bottom of the left lens. So as you're looking at it, the right one, you can actually see the edge of the diffuser coming in. There's just that tiny little hint of it popping in at the bottom. So I do have to fix that. But when I was doing my fellowship panel, I was kind of really careful that stuff like that didn't happen. So because I work by myself, I kind of have to do everything myself. So once I've got all the focus set up, and I use manual focus, when I'm doing product photography, it's just then trying to get a few different options. So I'll literally just work my way through the jug of water, taking pictures as I'm throwing it, trying to pull the glass away so that I don't see it coming in or the shadow coming in from the top, as much as I can. That ends up being the image that I use. And then it's just trying to give myself a few options until I've run out of water. Now, if I went through the images afterwards and there wasn't one that I'm going, yep, I like that, that looks good, I would then take the glasses off, dry them off, give them a bit of a clean, and then re-stick them down. And the reason I would do that is to kind of make sure there's no watermarks on the lenses or anything like that, and it would have to be cleaning the glass a little bit as well. But as it turns out, because these shots were getting done specifically for this video, so as it turns out, when I got to the end, I was quite happy. Now, I did quite like this one, but I didn't like the fact you could see the pore coming in from the top right, so that was why I didn't kind of use that one. So yeah, so whenever I'm doing sort of shots like this, where I know I'm going to need options, what I'll do is I'll always have a flick through to sort of see if I've got one or two that I'm happy with. I'll then just kind of zoom in a little bit just to double check, and just kind of have a sort of quick look around on the screen on the back of the camera. I photograph on a Panasonic S1 and S1R. This particular image was shot on the S1R. So yeah, so this is me kind of just flicking through, and that's kind of the one that I was sort of quite happy with. I think, to be perfectly honest, if it had been for a client, I think I probably would have tried to do some more. But because it was for this video, I wasn't sort of too worried. But yeah, so that's where the pore's coming in, and I just don't like seeing that. I want it to look like the water is naturally flowing down into the shot. I'm not a fan of kind of having the actual physical pore coming into the shot. So that is actually on the screen at the moment is actually my fellowship panel of sunglasses. But what I'm doing is I'm using Lightroom to import the images in, and just I'll quickly kind of go through and have a look, and then choose the image that I'm actually going to use. And I'll do a few little Lightroom adjustments. I know there's a few photographers that love using Lightroom for all the retouching. Personally, I tend to prefer using Photoshop. So I'll do a few little tweaks in Lightroom, but I don't tend to kind of do too many. So I think it's just lifting the shadows a little bit, doing the white balance on them, adding a little bit of contrast, adding a little bit of clarity, but never sort of too much really. Although I'm lifting the shadows quite a lot because they are quite dark frames. So and because it is only one light as well, I didn't want them to kind of look too dark, kind of in the blacks. So I'll then export that image and open it up in Photoshop. So basically, when I'm going through Photoshop, the main sort of thing that I'm doing with something like this is trying to kind of make sure that I just go through and do a few little tweaks and get rid of any sort of dust marks and stuff like that. I do apologise. The QuickTime screen record isn't particularly brilliant on my Mac when I've got other things open, so that's why it kind of will sort of flicker and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just going through checking for any sort of little bits of dust and things like that. I did contemplate taking that drip off the frame, but I leave it here. But I will actually end up going back and doing that later. But with glasses, dust is your biggest enemy, because even if you've cleaned them really nicely, you're always going to get some that falls on it. Normally what I would do, and I didn't do it today, but normally what I would do is I would actually have a fan on, sort of aimed at the glasses, because it just helps stop the dust settling on the lenses and things. But obviously that can only be done with certain shots. If you're doing images where they're hanging by thread or something, you can't have the fan on. Now, because I could see the edge of the diffuser coming in, all I have done is copied and pasted the layer, created a layer mask. I'm then gonna transformed it so that it was bigger. I'm then going to go through and just start bringing the new layer kind of in, and then trying to kind of sort of blend it as much as possible. And I'll lighten it as well slightly, because obviously it's going to be sort of slightly darker because I've transformed it from above. So, and there's a graduation going through the lenses, so it's just kind of little bit of trial and error when I'm going through and retouching it and stuff like that. So I'll kind of initially kind of do the 100% opacity on the brush, just add a little bit of curve just to try and blend it a little bit more so it kind of seems to fit with the lower edge of the lenses. So it's just sort of messing around, and then I'll go back to the layer mask and start brushing in at a lower opacity. So what I've done is I've just pressed 4 on the keypad, which drops my opacity of the brush down to 40%, and then it's just blending that hard edge, which you can see here. And then obviously the nice thing when you kind of do this, which is just, I can't remember, I think it's the backslash button to see it in red. I can then go through and kind of go, oh, I can still see that I haven't erased this bit, or that bit's a little bit hard. So I'll just soften that as well. So that's what I'm doing, just softening the kind of harder graduation bits. And then I'm going to switch this off in a second, just to kind of sort of check that it kind of blends nicely and stuff. And that kind of looks like it was never an issue. So it's then creating a new layer from that, and then, as I said, I'm now just going to go through and try and sort of fix any kind of little discrepancies kind of that I can kind of sort of see within the frames. Now, I'll be perfectly honest, this was done sort of quite quickly when I was doing the video, and so I don't. It's not that I spend loads of time editing and retouching it, but I thought I know some people kind of struggle to keep up with things, so that's why I haven't like sped the video up or anything like that. So I kind of wanted you to be able to see the kind of real time edit kind of on these images. But if you're submitting it for a client, I guess it depends on how much time you're willing to spend on a client's image. If you are doing it for competition, then obviously you want to go through and make sure that it is absolutely pristine perfect. If you're doing it for a fellowship, you definitely need to make sure it's pristine perfect. But yeah, I mean, the kind of edit that I'm doing on this would probably be to submit to the client, but I generally say to my clients, once they know which images they want to use, let me know the image numbers, and then I can just double check them to make sure that there's not any kind of faults or flaws or anything like that. But as I said, with sunglasses especially, the main thing that you kind of have to go through is get rid of any dust and marks and things like that. The other thing that I would tend to suggest is buy yourself a pair of white gloves from Boots. I tend to have sort of 4 or 5 pairs of white cotton gloves in the building, and it's just because when I'm handling things that I can leave fingerprints on, it's not great. And you will sort of see just here where I'm about to start retouching, you can actually see there's a fingerprint kind of on there. And again, it's just because I literally wanted to do this for the video. So I guess I just didn't give it the same kind of thought that I would do when doing it for a client. But the reason it's kind of good to kind of have the gloves on is it just saves you retouching time. And the main thing for me when you're doing stuff like this is trying to make sure that you're not spending hours behind the computer. So I would rather sort of spend twice as long getting it right in camera so that I can spend a quarter of the time doing post-production on it. So, you know, the things that I would maybe have done differently with this particular shot is I would have probably had a fan on to try and stop as much dust settling on the glasses as possible. I'd have cleaned the glass more than I did. I think I just rubbed the glass on my t-shirt when I was setting up. But I would normally sort of clean it properly with polish and or glass cleaner and stuff like that. And I'd have been wearing gloves, as I said. So that would have been the main sort of differences that I would have done. But you can still see, even though I've not done these things, I'm not having to spend an hour or anything like that kind of retouching the image. It's just going through and doing little checks, and I'm you know, a lot more kind of finicky than a lot of people when it comes to retouching as well, because I want it to be perfect. Just I guess it's just purely because of the fact that, you know, for me, kind of my photography, you know, when it's going to a client or anything like that, you know, it is potential marketing for me. You know, my client might know somebody that works for a bigger brand, and that means that I might be able to get more work if you know, if it's seen to kind of be sort of that kind of quality. So, and I've got work through that kind of train of thought, you know. So yeah, so with this, it's just obviously, like I said, just getting rid of that fingerprint that was like creeping in on the frame there. I would sort of say I've already done more retouching on this image than I had to do on the one that I submitted for my fellowship. So, you know, it is just that kind of preparation before you take the picture that makes a big difference. But at the same point, I have had images where I've spent a lot longer than this on as well. I will just go through and have a look for bits of dust or little marks that might have been on the frame, or on the glass underneath, I should say. So it's just kind of getting rid of sort of little bits like that. There were a couple of little streak lines coming in, which I'm getting rid of here. And the streak lines are just from the glass, because I hadn't cleaned the glass quite well enough. So it's just going through and tweaking those. And probably the biggest bit of retouching with a shot like this that I would have to do, whether I had done the preparation beforehand or not, the biggest bit of retouch that I would need to do is getting rid of the blue tack and the stick. Now, it just so happens that where this has kind of fallen is where that water is kind of dripping down. And that's a bit annoying. But, you know, it's all perfectly workable. So I've got no kind of issues with trying to get rid of that. There is a little bit of a pore coming in from the top. And again, to be honest, in real world type situation, if I saw that pore coming in, the chances are I would have reshot it rather than just getting rid of it. And although when I got rid of it, it looks absolutely fine, I do much prefer, you know, with something like this, getting rid of it in camera. So, first of all, to deal with the bit of blue tack that's connected to the frame, I'll just copy and paste the frame that's already there. I'll bring that in. I'm just going to warp it a little bit so it connects and just reduces some of the curve that was kind of there, because obviously it's the lower part of the frame. So I'm just making sure that that connects as it's meant to. I'll then add a layer mask, and then I'll just slowly kind of brush that in to get rid of the blue tack. So I've got the nice hard line, and to get rid of the reflection in the frame. of the blue tack as well, because obviously it'd be very easy just to kind of leave that blue tack reflection kind of in the frame by accident. And if I tried retouching it on the frame, the chances are that you'd be able to kind of sort of see that sort of quite easily. The next thing obviously is the blue tack that's connected to the glass, and also you've got to kind of think about the ripple, because that ripple's being caused by the blue tack, but the blue tack's not going to be there. So first thing I'll do is I'll work my way down the drip that's coming off the frame to get rid of the blue tack, and I'll probably sort of come round the bottom if I remember rightly as well. Yeah, so it's just kind of creating enough kind of area for me to then go around with the patch tool so that I can then grab, get rid of most of it by grabbing sort of some of the water from off to the side. I'm working my way around that ripple as well, as I said. So I want to take some of that flat water and then start getting rid of that ripple as well, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. So by doing this, it just creates a kind of, it's keeping that kind of reflection of the frame kind of in there, losing the ripple that's been caused by the blue tack, and just kind of working it so it starts to look a bit more natural and real. I will generally kind of, when I'm doing stuff like this, I'll use a combination of the patch tool, and I'll also use the clone stamp as well. And the clone stamp, I'll do a mix of 100% opacity and reduce the opacity and stuff. But the thing you've got to kind of be careful of when you're reducing the opacity of clone stamp, when you're retouching anything, is that it can get rid of any sort of natural texture that's in there. So you do just need to be a little bit mindful of that when you're kind of retouching your images, using that kind of option as well. But you can see kind of near the splash, it's just gone a little bit darker, which isn't great. And that's why going to the clone stamp, and here I'm doing it about 50%. I can just lighten that from off to the side, so it's not quite as obviously dark. But I get rid of this splash because I think it looks like a snitch from Harry Potter, and I just didn't like that in this particular picture. Although it was quite a fancy looking splash, but it is just getting rid of that. So the main thing, like I said, when you're doing sort of pictures like this, especially when you see pictures like this, I think in your mind you sort of think it's going to be 2 or 3 or 4 photos kind of all merged together to sort of create one final shot. And I wanted to kind of show in this video, first of all, it doesn't need to be complicated. It's one light. So if you're a photographer, the chances are you're going to have a single light. The second thing that I kind of wanted to show as well was it doesn't need to be expensive. It doesn't need to be loads of expensive props or sets or anything like this. The sheet of glass is something from units that I've got in the studio toilet. The piece of card, can just be a bit of card from your local kind of art shop, or you could get away with using wrapping paper, which will obviously be thinner, but it doesn't need to be thick. Here you can see I'm using the Color Effects Pro 4 and just using a sort of contrast only, which I'm going to reduce the opacity of. The reason I've actually used this is I do have an action that I normally use that does a little bit of curves, a little bit of levels, and it does a few other sort of bits with shadow highlights, things like that. And it is an action I use it on a lot of my photos, but I can't really remember what it does. And I didn't want to have to try and explain it to you. So I thought I'll use something that you may have access to, because a lot of people, a lot of photographers I know do have the Color Effects Pro, like the Nick collection. So I just kind of add that on. And what I will end up doing within this is I will save the PSD file. And once that's saved, I'll just double check that I've done all the retouching that I need to do. If I need to do a little bit more, I'll do that. And then once I've kind of sort of saved it where I know the retouching's finished, but I've still got the layers, I'll then flatten it and then kind of sort of save the JPEG. So I think with this, the kind of reflection that you see in the lenses here is actually come from a ripple underneath. It's not actually a reflection in the lens. It is underneath the things, but I don't particularly like it because it does look like it's something that's reflecting. So one of the sort of final bits of actual retouching that I'll be doing is getting rid of that. And as I said, I'll then flatten it, and then that's when I'll look at the crop. My entire panel was a 10:8 ratio, so I will crop this to the same. And although on this I will then zoom in a little bit as well, I shot this on my 24-105, and when I did the panel, it was all on my 70-200. So there was, I don't think any of the images actually ended up being zoomed in at all. They were all pretty much as shot. I am genuinely a great believer that product photography, if you can do it in camera as close as possible, then that's what you should do. I know a lot of people will add in fake reflections, and do sort of things like that. And I sort of think, do you know what? If you can find a way of doing it in camera, it saves you a lot more time post production wise, and B, it just looks more real. And I think that's kind of the important thing is, if you want to be producing like some really good quality product shots, it's definitely sort of something worth sort of considering trying to do it in camera. And the nice thing with this particular shot with the water, if you want to kind of go and try and do something similar, it doesn't need to be sunglasses. You could do this with lipsticks, you could do it with jewelry, you could do it with perfume, mascara, whatever it might be. You could, if you've got something that is a water-based product or something like that, this is sort of an option of something that you could potentially do with the shots and just kind of have that sort of splash coming in to the actual shot. I use the Bowen's Pro 1000 lights, or certainly in this shot, it was the single light, and that's the nice thing. It's not expensive. It's one light, one sheet of glass, one piece of card. It's really sort of quite straightforward. So that is kind of pretty much the shot near enough done. I would encourage you, if you want to go and kind of photograph sort of something like sunglasses, then make yourself one of these tracing paper diffusers, because they are brilliant, and they really do sort of help with that kind of reflection in the lenses. Or, as I said, if you want to try this sort of shot with the water, experiment with other products as well, because it does kind of give you a lot of kind of freedom and flexibility to kind of play around with other sort of things. I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of watch this video, and over the sort of coming few weeks, I'm hoping to kind of do a few more videos that are relevant to things that I did within my panel. Hopefully there'll be sort of stuff that you kind of find of interest kind of there. And if you've got any questions as well, please feel free to get in touch. I'm very approachable, so please feel free to call or email me or anything like that. And if there's anything that you would actually like me to go and do as well, so that you can kind of see, then again, give me a shout. More than happy. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And go and have some fun and play.